Mark Wiggensberg. I'm the director of the Institute for Integrative Health, IIH, and welcome bright and early to one of our breakfast symposia. We were just discussing the pros and cons of having an early breakfast symposium like this. People dragging themselves out of bed and coming in to see very interesting talks, but on the other hand, it gives us an early jump start to our day and then we can carry on. So we're very, first of all, before I introduce our speaker, I want to make everyone here aware, if you're not already, on November 1st, the IIH will be sponsoring our second annual full-day conference over at the California Endowment, which is just a couple miles from here downtown. So the title of our talk of our conference is Revisioning Healthcare, Reclaiming the Soul of Medicine. So we're going to be really delving into some interesting things, 2 keynote speakers and a lot of experiential breakouts. So it's open to faculty, physicians, nurses, allied health, students, community members, which basically means anybody. So if you're interested at all, we have flyers up here, we have flyers outside, or you can just hop on the IIH website or click the link up there and hope to see you there. Our keynote speaker is going to be Dr. Carl Hammerschlag, who's a psychiatrist, integrative psychiatrist from Arizona, who worked for many, many years with the Hopi people on their reservations, and has written several books about his experiences there, and came away with quite a different understanding of medicine and mental health than he had through his Western psychiatric training. So he'll be starting us off, and we've got a lot of good things happening. So to move into today's talk, I'm really happy to introduce Nina Arnaudova, who is a postdoc in the Department of Psychology, Dornsife School of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Working with her mentor is Hortensia Amaro, who is near and dear to us in IIH. She's a steering committee member who's been very active with us. And Nina will be speaking about the role of technology and how to leverage technology in mindfulness-based interventions, a very, very important and timely topic for any of you who are starting to see some of these apps that are out there. So we look forward to what you're going to share, Nina. Thank you
very much, Mark.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is my first time at the Institute of Integrative Health, so I'm very happy to be here. And as Mark said, I'm a postdoc at the Department of Psychology, working also closely with Hortensia Amaro at the Department of Social Work. And kind of to orient myself, I was wondering, how many of you are clinicians? Are there any clinicians here? A few. And do we have also researchers? Yes, and a combination of the two. And I guess we also have a few community members. Am I correct? Awesome. All right, so I've tried to kind of make my talk understandable for people from diverse backgrounds. But if there are any questions, if anything is not clear, please don't hesitate to interrupt me and just ask me. All right, so as Mark said, I will just talk a little bit about how to leverage technology in mindfulness-based interventions. And the topics I'm going to cover is kind of, just quickly introducing you to what is mindfulness and what are mindfulness interventions. How can we use technology in mental health treatment? How do these two have been blended so far, and what we know about the evidence? And I'm going to hopefully try to inspire you to think about the future opportunities that stand before us. All right, so let's start. So what is mindfulness? You probably have heard this word many, many times, but I always think it's important to kind of clarify what it is. So mindfulness is defined by John Kabat-Zinn, one of the forefathers of mindfulness in the West, as paying attention in a particular way on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So you can think of it as kind of a general propensity to function in this way. And this is like a personality characteristic that might be pretty stable. It's kind of part of the temperament. And it can be measured by a self-report questionnaire, the 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire, where it will look at your tendency to observe, to see things and not judge them, and to be aware. But it also can be a state thing. So you might be also in a state, a temporary state of increased mindfulness. And that can also be measured with a different questionnaire. An example of that would be the Toronto Mindfulness questionnaire, and that would measure, how your curiosity at the present moment and your decentering. So these are two different aspects of mindfulness. And then we also have the so-called mindfulness practices. So these are things that one can do in order to increase their state of mindfulness and learn mindfulness skills and cultivate mindfulness in general. And I really like this kind of definition. This will be a set of attentional-based, regulatory, and self-empowering training regimes cultivated for various ends, including well-being and psychological health. And some of the examples of this would be yoga, meditation, or even Tai Chi. So all of these practices can help with nurturing mindfulness. So this is something that has come from Eastern traditions, and people in the West thought that that might be something that by cultivating we can help people dealing with a variety of health conditions. But why would mindfulness help for these health conditions? Well, it might be a tool that can help the mind work in a more efficient and healthy way by increasing kind of attention with awareness to everything that is around you and to both your internal and external experiences without necessarily pushing you to react right away and judge it as good or bad and do something for it. It can also, it can also increase cognitive flexibility because of that. You no longer kind of go on automatic pilot, but you are really be able to work what is best for you. And also some people talk about that it allows exposure to internal and external experiences. Some of these underlying working mechanisms of mindfulness are not completely clear yet. There are also a lot of other kind of proposed mechanisms for mindfulness, so that is still research that is being done in numerous laboratories around the world, looking at different kinds of levels for the mindfulness working both on behaviors, but also how does mindfulness affect the brain, both in short-term and long-term and physiology. So these kind of ideas of mindfulness and the understanding that it might have of these useful working mechanisms has pushed the development of a number of mindfulness-based interventions. And I'll just kind of like give you a little bit of a history of what these are. So first, I'll start with the mindfulness-based stress reduction program by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn that was done in 1979. And then from it, a number of other treatment modalities have spawned. One of them is the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy by Zinder Segal that was first published in 2002. And this was more thought for people with depression. And then about the same time, two groups of people created the mindfulness-based relapse prevention. One of them is our own Dr. Amaro, who created the mindfulness-based relapse prevention for women. And the other one is the mindfulness-based relapse prevention by Sarah Bowen. So they kind of came up both at the same time by using ideas of mindfulness and applying them to people with substance use problems. And in the mindfulness-based relapse prevention for women, it's a direct adaptation of the mindfulness-based stress reduction, while in the mindfulness-based relapse prevention by Sarah Bowen, there is she worked together with Dr. Siegel, and she used both mindfulness-based stress reduction and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. So all of these interventions use primarily mindfulness practices and information about mindfulness to achieve change. And some of them have also aspects of, let's say, cognitive therapy, in the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, where they also work on thoughts and conditions, and in the mindfulness-based relapse prevention on some of the relapse prevention came from cognitive behavioral therapy. But there are also other types of treatments where they have mindfulness components, but it's not the primary and most important part of the intervention. This would be the dialectical behavioral therapy by Marshall Linehan, which was first developed for people with borderline personality disorder, and also the acceptance commitment therapy by Stephen Hayes. All right. However, in this talk, I'll focus on the MBSR, MBCT in MBRP therapies, because these are the ones that are primarily mindfulness. All right, so just a quick overview of what the research has shown. Well, the research has shown that these interventions have been effective for a number of both somatic and psychological conditions, and they have looked at duration of outcome, of remission of symptoms, as well as some other physiological and neurological responses. Just a few examples like asthma, cancer, chronic pain. Mindfulness has been applied with some success, as well as psychological conditions such as anxiety, for generalized anxiety disorder, addiction, I mentioned that before, and things like post-traumatic stress disorder. And if you go to this link, you actually can find some of the references for these conditions, particularly for the MBSR. But I want to just point out that we need to be careful of research limitations for the field of mindfulness intervention, but also for any other behavioral interventions, evidence-based behavior interventions out there. This article just recently got published in 2017 in JAMA that talks that even a therapy that is considered kind of, the most empirically supported treatment for a number of mental health conditions, that would be cognitive behavioral therapy. When you look at the research and the rigor with which it's done, there are a number of gaps. So mindfulness is a much newer field, and again, the research also has some limitations. And one of the big concerns has often been that there is a big self-selection bias for people who participate in these studies. There might be people who are kind of drawn to this. So how are these interventions delivered? So they're usually delivered in a group format. But some people have started thinking, well, can we also deliver it in an individual format? There has been very little research looking at the different formats of delivery and whether practicing by yourself is the same as practicing in a group. Groups can be inherently helpful because you can share experiences, you can motivate each other to kind of keep up with a hard regimen. It also comes with disadvantages because that means that a number of people you have to disclose what you're feeling or how your experiences are. And some research suggests that the group itself can have a unique contribution to your treatment progress. So depending on the group, maybe you'll be more successful or less successful within your treatment. And I don't think, I haven't really seen too much research into talking about what is the ideal composition of a group in order for mindfulness intervention to be the most successful for the individual members. And I think that is an interesting question because you can also have groups that don't function very well together. And I have also not really seen much research that compares the two forms of delivery one-to-one and see whether the benefits are similar. I did find in one study that was published just last year that compared one-to-one group treatment and individual treatment and found similar effects. But again, it was a very small scale pilot study, so we need to look more into it. And even though we have beginning evidence and suggestion that mindfulness is really helpful, disseminating mindfulness is a challenge. And I really like this table by Dr. Arnaudova that she talks here about implementing treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, but I think a lot of these issues apply also for mindfulness-based interventions, because no matter at what stage you are during the dissemination process, you might have challenges such as clinicians not necessarily being willing to accept that treatment or being trained to deliver the treatment in the way that the protocol is done. And then how do you do continuous treatment? How do you make sure that patients do get access to it and they're not referred to any other treatments that might be less efficacious? So regardless of which stage you're in, there are challenges. And in particular, when you're talking about MPIs, there are a few strategies specific, because in order for someone to become a mindfulness-based intervention teacher, they need to go to a very long process of training. Sometimes it takes up to 36 months, 5 courses, and it's expensive. I was looking at the certification. It can cost like $10,000 to get your certification to do that, and you need time of your regular work and additional study and practice. And also for individuals to kind of take a course, even an online course, can be a few $100s to $1,000, and it's not always covered by insurance. So a lot of people would not be able to have access to those validated protocols. So kind of, thinking about these challenges, I think these are true for a lot of other treatments, and that's not necessarily specific to mindfulness-based interventions. Technology might be able to help. It might be able to solve some of these issues. And I'm going to now talk a little bit about technology-based intervention. So we have kind of played with the idea of using technology for quite some time. And back in the day, it was this kind of technology, like using video cassettes for giving good examples, or calling people on the phone, or even, I don't know how many of you remember those Palm Pilots. I think 10 years ago there were a lot of studies on pilots, but I think some of the young people would have no idea what these things are anymore. And right now the technology that, of course, we're talking about will be online web-based computers and smartphones. And technology-based intervention can come in a few different forms. First, they can be added to your regular treatment. So that can help you kind of learn more, get more practice outside of your clinicians office, and can complement everything that you have done as part of your regular treatment. It can also help maintain any clinical improvements. So after you examine your treatment, you're already good to go. But we know that most of mental health conditions are very likely to relapse. So using technological tools, you might be able to kind of extend the effect of your treatment by using technology. It can also link different clinicians that are involved in your care and help them also communicate your medical records. And that can be very important for people who are dealing with complex health issues and comorbidities and combination of mental disorders and other health conditions, also medical conditions. Also can help with behavioral changes, and it can also prevent the occurrence of health conditions. So if we are able to identify people who are at risk for particular conditions, we might be able to use technology to either prevent the onset or delay the onset of particular health conditions. So I'm not going to talk about all these possible ways of using technology and mindfulness. I will focus on how we can help to how we can use technology for behavioral change. So I think it's important to talk about the advantages of technology-based interventions, because I think that in the current climate there is also a lot of worry about technology replacing us. But I think technology can also be very helpful for both us and our patients. First, it can offer accessibility and availability across settings. So think about the people in those rural areas that do not have access or have a hard time moving around because of disability or age or lack of resources to just go places. Well, using technology, they will be able to access this treatment. Also, it will help with making treatment consistent. So that's what we're talking here is about increasing treatment fidelity. Because in order to have every client receive care, we'll have different clinicians. And how can we assure that every clinician is doing their best, or they're doing according to the manual every single time? But with technology, because you program it, right? So far, they don't think completely by themselves. That might be happening in the future, but for now, you can tell them what they're supposed to do, and computers and programs can offer particular that care in the best format. Also, it can free up the clinician's time, and I think this is very important because we have a lot of need, a lot of people requiring care, and they always need more time. So by being able to substitute a part of the practice or part of the treatment with technology, might be able to you'll be able to provide more care and focus on things that technology would not be able to cover. Also, it will remove barriers to treatment. So I talked a little bit about mobility issues, but it can also remove barriers for people who experience high level of stigma because of their disorders. It's one thing to go and admit to a group of strangers that you're dealing with substance issues or that you're having trouble in your family. It's another thing to go anonymous on the internet and get some help. And also it can, and because of that, we can have more people receiving treatment, and hopefully we can be able to keep them for a longer time. There's another point that was raised, and I thought it was kind of interesting, especially for when we're talking about mental health conditions, is that there is more written communication. And I think this is kind of interesting to think about how putting something right now on paper kind of makes you think about it even in more detail than if you just go and like blur it out to your therapist. And you already, by doing that, you might have already been halfway there. Because once you see what you wanted to say, you can already see some of your biases and how your particular disorder has affected you. And lastly, it can help us collect longitudinal data. And I think this is very important for people dealing with chronic health conditions. It is good if we can follow them throughout the years and see how they change, how their behaviors change, how their physiology changes, and how they respond to different treatments and different things that happen in their life. And that can just give us more information to provide better treatment. So overall, I think technology can be very helpful and useful for us. So what is the evidence? There was a recent, now it's almost 10 years ago, so we might need a new one. There was a meta-analysis of a number of technologically based interventions. This meta-analysis included 92 studies, and I think most of them were published by 2006. So of course, since then we've had a proliferation of this research. But they found a few things about how effective technologically based interventions are. So first, they found kind of similar effects in technologically based intervention to regular intervention, so the effect sizes were not so different. And they seem to be more effective for people dealing with psychological rather than somatic disorders. So technology might be particularly useful for issues of mental health. And they also said that in this meta-analysis, the studies seem to work better for younger populations than for older populations. Now, the authors, and I agree with them, pointed out that might be changing. And I think that's completely correct, because people now, start using technology at a very early age, and as they age, they're going to be very comfortable with it. So that might not be true if an updated meta-analysis is done. And they also found that individual TBIs, technology-based interventions, are more effective than group interventions. And I think this is particularly relevant for mindfulness, because we still don't know how well these work in individual format. And also there might be specific technologies that might be more helpful. So for example, they were talking about how if you have a clinician that is helping a person going through this technology-based treatment, calling your client might work better than sending them a text message or sending them an email or vice versa. So we also need to look at what are specific components of the technology that might be more helpful. And another thing that they pointed out, which I thought was very interesting, was that when interventions were using a lot of different platforms, such as phone calls, emails, and then an online chat room, and maybe an app, then actually they seem to be less effective, which I thought was very interesting. They attributed this to a process called multi-channeling. So kind of the people were getting distracted by everything that was happening and not were able to get the maximum benefit of every component. All right. Yes, so that's it. If you want to know more, like in general, about technology and technologically based interventions, I would really recommend this book called Behavioral Healthcare and Technology that gives a very good overview about different issues. I've cited it a few times throughout this presentation. It also talks about issues of research, implementation, and analysis. So I really recommend this one. So how can we use technology in the dissemination of mindfulness-based treatment? So I wanted to first talk to you a little bit about how do you develop any intervention. And I guess some of you, the researchers in the room, and maybe the clinicians, are aware that there is this stage model of intervention development that is also accepted by the National Institute of Health. And actually this picture is from National Center for Integrative Health. I think that was what the prediction was called. So these first three figures are stage one. So this is kind of your conceptualization of what an intervention needs to entail, trying to apply it to a few clients, getting feedback, making sure that it's acceptable and it makes sense, and also doing a small scale pilot study to see, okay, do we get any signal that it might be helpful? Then you go to stage two, where you would actually look at the efficacy of the intervention kind of in a research setting, where you can control every single aspect of the process, and you can have a control group so that you can really see, okay, if it is delivered in its perfect way as it is, as we have proposed it in the manual, is it effective? Then you would try it to, do it in more real-life settings where you train, clinicians that are not researchers to do it, and see, well, can it be also delivered in that setting? And lastly, you would work on disseminating and implementing and trying to see what would be the best way of doing it. So looking at this, I thought, okay, let's see what is the current current level of technology-based, mindfulness-based interventions. That's a mouthful. John and I, who has been very helpful as a volunteer in the last few months, looked at the NIH website, where you can actually take a look at what government funding has been given to recent research. And you can see where your taxpayers' money are going. And we particularly looked at how many technologically based, mindfulness-based interventions have been funded. And we found 26 funded projects in the last 4 years, and for an average of $300,000 per year. And if you look at the institute, they were mostly funded by the National Center for Contemplative and Integrative Health, then by the National Institute of Drug Abuse. The next one is the National Cancer Institute with 3, and then the National Institute of Mental Health with another 3 funded projects. And this right here shows by a number of projects in terms of the different kind of funding schemes, and they match to those stages that we talked about of intervention development. So there are a few studies kind of in the R21 and R34 stage, which is that stage 1, where they're kind of trying to prove the concept and figure out kind of the little pilot. Do we have any idea that they're working? Then we have a few studies in the R01 stage. So this is your randomized controlled trials, where clinicians researchers are very involved in checking this. efficacy. Then there are also a few small business grants. So that is, these are not research based, but that's also more developing technology work. And then we have a number of other grants. This will be your training grants for people doing their PhDs or learning to become independent researchers. And it's interesting to see that you have also these small business grants. But one of the things is with technology, you might be able to skip stage 2 and stage 3 of this. Or it's kind of hard to distinguish even between the two, because once you have a product that works, you can start right away, implement it, and see how good it works as implemented in the real life by making it accessible to people. All right, so going forward into looking at the current active studies and what they're doing, it's interesting that there is also a variety of populations that they've looked at using technology and mindfulness. For most of the studies and most of the projects are on adults, but there are also one project on older adults, one project on military members, and one project on adolescents. So there is an interest across the lifespan, also in different occupational settings. And lastly, we also created a little graph to kind of represent the different types of technology that has been used over the years. And what you see is that smartphone apps have started kind of getting some more funding. Web-based still remain the majority of the research, kind of using online platforms, but there is more and more interest in using smartphone apps. So what are the kind of therapies that they're looking at? Well, most of the studies, most of the projects, this is not based on the project, but this is based on a number of studies that we have looked at. Yes, that we have looked at. I think we looked in preparation for this talk at about 34 studies that have been published in the recent years on online MPIs, and try to kind of summarize what are the findings. So first, I think it's important to talk what are the interventions that have been developed into the technological-based format. And we do see most of them were adaptations of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy and mindfulness-based stress reduction, and a few were kind of a combination of the two. And there are a number of studies that have had their own type of mindfulness, and sometimes it was not exactly clear what were the different components. Most of the research was also in web format, so that absolutely dominates the technologically based mindfulness intervention field. But I think, as I said, there might be a tendency for way more smartphone apps. And conditions addressed were again a combination of both somatic and psychological symptoms. So pretty much what you see in the regular mindfulness intervention literature, you can also see in the technological intervention. And what is interesting is there was very high attrition rates in the people in the active condition. That is problematic for any research study looking at the effects, because you might be getting only the people who are better. Maybe the people who are not doing so well are the ones that are dropping out. So kind of it changes your sample. But the attrition rates varied widely. I really cannot tell you right now what is what would make a difference, and I think this is a very interesting question to talk about. What kind of parts of the technological-based intervention reduces attrition rates? Is it because people get notifications, or they also have some contact with clinician, or not? But looking at some of the reasons why people drop out, the most commonly cited when recorded, because not all studies managed to record that, is that either they got more severe, so there was an increase of symptoms, so they no longer wanted to use a technology-based intervention and wanted to go to a traditional doctor, or had some lack of interest or motivation, they just didn't want to do it anymore. And also, some people sometimes cited time constraints. Notably, the study with the least attrition was a study that tested the application of a technology-based mindfulness-based intervention to employees in a work setting. And I can understand why that would also help with keeping people in, because if it's a requirement that you complete this mindfulness intervention for your work, you might be more likely to stick with it. So what was the quality of the studies? Well, I would say that they varied, but there was a lot of studies that were problematic in the way that they compared this technologically based mindfulness intervention to either nothing or to weightless control. And this is problematic because people get better even if you give them sugar pills. I guess you guys know all about the placebo effect, and that placebo effect even sometimes works when people know that the placebo is a placebo. Until we have studies with good controls, where random assignment, where it's not one subject, one intervention, the other subject, another intervention, only then we can know how good these are. So this research is really still in its early stages. Another thing that we noticed is that most of the studies were done in Western Europe or the US, which of course challenges the generalizability of the findings. And most of the participants within these studies were white and female. So, that actually creates a question about, again, generalizability. And I thought, do we actually know anything about the effects of mindfulness-based interventions across different genders? Well, there are a few studies that have started to talk about it and look into it. Recently, a study that just published this year talked about the underrepresentation of male participants in studies on mindfulness-based interventions. That's usually not what happens in science historically. In science historically, there have been more male participants than female participants, but when it comes to mindfulness-based intervention, it's flipped. Also, there has been one study that looked at application mindfulness in a large population of students, and they did find stark differences between men and women, with women benefiting way more. And there was also kind of a similar conclusion in a review done on mindfulness-based intervention for substance use, where they found more evidence for women benefiting more. And I think this is a very important question that we need to be thinking about. And I don't think I have really seen any studies that have compared different ethnic, racial, or cultural groups and their response to mindfulness. And that is also an important issue. Overall, there are two studies that have looked, two reviews and meta-analysis that have looked at technology-based, mindfulness-based interventions, and they did find, some positive effects on things like depression, anxiety, well-being, mindfulness, and reduction of stress. But they did note that there is possibility of a publication bias with, only studies that actually achieve meaningful change being published. And I think that's, again, a very common problem in science, and it's something that can be adjusted for statistically. And as far as I remember, Spikerman did that, and the results were kind of similar. And also, it was interesting that in this meta-analysis, they suggested that they seem to work better if there's a condition involved, which would be problematic if you're thinking about dissemination, because if you not only need to develop a platform, but you also need to have a clinician that spends the time to follow up with the patients. But why do we need the platform? I think that that's something that we need to think about how we can do it better. And this meta-analysis by professional actually said that even without facilitator, it was a review, I'm sorry, it was not a meta-analysis. This review said that there is some evidence that even without a facilitator, without the help of a clinician, they might work. So I think these are interesting questions. And I just wanted to show you just generally how it usually happens, or how maybe ideally it would happen. So there is a mindfulness-based, we talked about the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which was validated first in person. And then Son Dimijan worked with the creator of MBCT to create a web-based version of it. Unfortunately, this is not available for clients, but if you want to get trained on it, you can actually take a course online. And now that they have developed this and showed some initial evidence for its effectiveness, they're also trying to apply it to other groups. So the group is now looking at perinatal depression, not only at depressive symptoms but. And I think, so Mark mentioned that there are a number of mindfulness apps out there. And I just wanted to point out that as we see in the funding and as just in general, there's a tendency for people to use much more mobile phones and their smartphones to access the internet as their primary mode of accessing the internet. And that's even more the case in countries outside of the US. So developing countries where people might not have laptops, but they're more likely to have smartphones. And there are a bunch of smartphone apps that offer mindfulness on the go. And very few of the commercially available applications have been scientifically studied. And even though they talk about the positive effects of mindfulness, only very few can actually show that their particular app or the way they deliver mindfulness result in some meaningful change of somatic or psychological problems. So if you're looking for an app for yourself, I would suggest take a look at what is the evidence behind that particular app if you really want to make sure that you're most likely to have some positive benefits. All right, so really quickly, I'll just mention about what the future can hold and what might be some concerns. So first, what would the future hold for me? I am a postdoc right now, as I mentioned, under Dr. Hortensio Amaro, who is testing the effectiveness of the moment-by-moment in women's recovery treatment for women, low-income ethnically diverse samples of women in residential substance use treatment. And we've been thinking and talking about with the PI of this project and my mentor, Dr. Amaro, that dissemination is an issue, and we've been thinking that maybe technology would allow us to disseminate it if we find that this treatment is efficacious. But also we can go into so many directions when we look at mindfulness. We can think about how using wearable sensors such as heart rate or respiration or anything else that can be backed up in your smartphone, in your smartwatch, or in your in a sensor can help with getting better treatment. How can we adapt the program so that they change as the needs of the person change and their symptoms either get better or get worse? How can we deliver interventions exactly when they're needed? So think about the person dealing with substance use issues and getting a trigger and getting overwhelmed by craving. How can we deliver treatment at that particular moment to help them deal with that issue and not relapse? And how can we use virtual reality for group practice? And it's interesting, I saw that in the military, Dr. Rice is trying to do a virtual reality test of mindfulness-based stress reduction in a platform called Second Life. So I'm looking forward to see if any outcomes become available. And then, again, I mentioned this, we can follow individuals in the long term. But we also need to be careful. And there are a few issues that I don't think we talk enough about. There are issues about data privacy. Who will be able to access information, what you do and how you're receiving treatment, and what are the things that you share with this app. There are ethical and legal issues with different certifications required in different countries and even in different states. Also, technology develops very, very quickly. So, as you said, the Palm Pilots are no longer around. Really, who knows what will happen in seven years? And usual randomized controlled trial, that kind of stage 2, stage 3 testing of intervention development, which is very important, takes about 7 years. So I think that we need to think about, okay, how can we do that faster and evaluate these effectiveness faster. And what if there are any negative side effects? And I think so some of these authors raise the issues, would the availability of the apps prevent people from seeking treatment from a professional when things, when the symptoms get worse? Or would they start over-relying on it and you might be missing some important signs? So I think these are a few issues to think about. So just quick conclusions, if you need to remember anything. So there are various models of mindfulness-based interventions, and they have received support for different treatments. But we need higher quality studies in both the face-to-face implementation of the therapy, but also in the technologically based interventions. Initial adaptations of the NBIs seem promising, and technology can solve a number of dissemination problems there, but there are still a lot of open questions. So I want to thank you for your attention, my mentor, Dr. Amaro, for supporting me throughout these few months, Jonah, who has helped kind of go through some of this data, and the funding. This kind of review of the work done on this field was funded by Research Council and Postdoctoral Scholarship from the USC Department of Social Work. And of course, all the people that done the actual work, including the pictures. Thank you very much. And I think we have a few minutes for questions. If anyone has any. Okay, go ahead.
Just curious, I just got a thing like yesterday or the day before from Mindful USC. They sent a link to their new app.
Yes.
Do you know anything about it, or like how they developed it, or what?
No, but I also just recently received it, and this is on my to-do list to go and look at it because, as I said, mindfulness can be very helpful, and I cannot say whether this app is going to bring the benefits of a mindfulness-based stress reduction program only until these have been directly compared. And I think that will take a while until something like this can happen. Okay. Any other questions?
In most of these studies, how many subjects did they use? And then how would they determine the subjects? Did they pick them randomly, and then would they keep picking subjects until they got certain results? How would they go about it?
I think you're raising a very important question of sample selection. And I think I need to go back to, and to be able to be certain about what percentage of the studies did what precisely. But I think especially for the people with for the studies with no control group, whoever signed up on the advertisement would be included in the studies. Random assignment needs to be done, and if you have a waitlist control condition, that usually would include some random assignment in too. But again, it is not the same as actually randomly assigning to two different technologically based interventions. One that delivers mindfulness, and one that delivers something else. And I think this is very important. It's also challenging because creating a complete new program for something that would only serve as a control condition and you don't think is going to help would require a lot of investment in both time and money. But maybe research groups can come together and develop one standard control kind of technology that can be used for multiple studies, because this is very important. Otherwise, we cannot draw conclusions of their effectiveness.
Hi, how can we follow your work, and what's next for you?
Thank you for your question. Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I do try to kind of post things there. And now the first step for the team I'm part of is to look at the effectiveness of the mindfulness-based response prevention for women that is currently being tested in residential treatment. The PI on it is doctoral Amaro, and I'll be looking at some side questions into it, and hopefully we'll find some interesting results and we'll be able to share with you. Yeah, you're welcome. Go ahead.
Could you know more about those studies who used the clinicians, what kinds of clinicians, and whether that was the primary or the secondary component of the intervention?
That was the secondary component of the intervention. And I think, usually the clinicians were some type of psychologist or counselor that would support. I don't think I've seen any people receiving communication with a psychiatrist for the help. I think that would be kind of expensive and cost prohibitive to do. And I think this is also a very, very interesting question. It doesn't matter who supports your interaction with the intervention, because of course, depending on their education, they approach the subject in a different way.
Have you seen any in your research of working with teenagers and using mindfulness?
Yes, I know for certain there are, I think, 3 studies that are currently funded and being running in the US, or funded through NIH. There might be more from different funding sources. In terms of the published work, on top of my head, maybe one bit was there, but not so much. It's mostly without it.
There was one on college students and binge drinking.
Yeah. So, do you consider college students? I guess they're freshmen, sophomore.
Couple comments. That question brought one of them up. You alluded early on to other mind-body interventions that have mindfulness components to them, and that's a topic near and dear to my heart because I use interactive guided imagery, and we work with teams, and there are many mindfulness components to that. So I think the mindfulness studies are fabulous, and I'm glad that it's exploded as it has. It's allowed us to, as a physician, it's allowed me to talk to other skeptical physicians and say, look, there's an evidence base, there's scientific basis. You can change brain activity, you can change gene transcription with mindfulness, So I guess my comment is that, I don't know what my comment is. I lost that mindfulness is certainly an important element of many other mind-body modalities, as you alluded to. And so, for instance, one of the things we're doing in our study is measuring mindfulness, both the effect of our intervention on mindfulness and also the potential of mindfulness as a moderator in the effects of the intervention, if you would. So I don't know, hopefully we'll be having results come out of our adolescent intervention with our guided imagery shortly. The other thing is just to say that although technology is great and a great adjunct, they also have a certain bit of, I think it's healthy skepticism, I don't know, and I'm glad you addressed it to some extent, because you had a slide on the advantages of mindfulness, and then I was thinking, well, what are the potential disadvantages? And you talked about potential side effects. I'm thinking of Blade Runner 2049 that I just saw this past weekend.
Was it good?
I like the original better, but it was good, and you can see the limits of technology there very clearly in certain ways. But I guess one of the things, for instance, that we're looking at in our study of guided images, we're working actually with groups of kids and with therapists, quote unquote, not licensed therapists necessarily, but facilitators with this. And I think one of the effective change agents in any therapeutic relationship is the relationship. So the human relationship, and it was alluded to even in your comment that, well, if the therapist is involved, they had even better findings. So again, that's just a comment that I think as we get caught up in the techno craze, I always have a little caveat or a little thought in the back of my head that it's still healing to sit with human beings in a therapeutic relationship. So
yeah, I think I just want to point to two other things. I think, or at least my understanding of the literature is we don't really know what is the needed, so to say, dose of mindfulness. to achieve results. How often do you need to practice? How many minutes do you need to count to be able? And does it depend on the individual? Are there any particular genes or characteristics or health issues that might prevent you from getting the benefits based on that dose? And I think this is a particular issue that we need to take a look at. And when it comes to the technology, I do think that it's also possible to develop a relationship with a technological tool. And I certainly realize I have a relationship with a number of social media platforms where I have a desire to go and see them and see what's going on. And of course, people are looking into avatars and virtual assistants and different kinds of forms. So the issue of therapeutic elements, it rapport might be also achieved through technology, but it's to be seen, right? And maybe not everyone can develop the same relationship with technological tools.
You should see later.
I will. Are there any more questions? Well, I guess we're right on time. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.
Oh, yeah. Two things before everybody goes. First of all, for